Morning, everyone. We're coming to 2 minutes past, so I think we'll make a start. The sessions are recorded for anyone wishing to see these afterwards. So let's make a start. James, can you see my screen? Just confirming that.
Yeah, we've got see your screen.
Thank you, James. Cheers. Great. Thanks for attending this morning, everyone. Much appreciated for taking the time out of your diaries today. I'm Nick Brownrigg. I am one of the directors here at Integrity360. I specialise in managed detection and response as well. That's my area of evangelism. And really pleased to be joined today by James Jenkins, one of the sales engineers at CrowdStrike. And today we're going to be talking about, well, the agenda's there, but ultimately I'm going to talk around some initial market observations. I'm going to hand you over to James, who's going to talk about CrowdStrike's approach to detection and response. And we'll sum up with a bit of Q&A. If you have any questions, and don't just feel free to drop them in the chat throughout. We've got Beck in the background, keeping an eye on those questions, and we'll save some time for the end to run through those. But again, thanks again for your attendance today, much appreciated. So let's make a start. So why are we here? Hopefully we've all got something in common as to why we're on this call, but I think it's because we continue to well, the cyber defense challenge continues. It's the same old story, unfortunately, that and probably the scale and the gaps are growing in the industry. The sophistication is growing in the industry, and that's crucially why the likes of cyber, why CrowdStrike and Integrity360 continue to exist in the industry. What are the challenges we're seeing? Well, it's of course the usual skills gap continuing to grow. I think more recently we're really seeing a lot of focus on staff burnout as well, because of single person SOCs or internal SOCs. Trying to keep up with emerging evolving threats in the industry. It's having huge repercussions on health of staff, and I think that it has a link to each of the other four quadrants on this slide as well. Costs I think is probably the most pertinent one, particularly in the economic climate the way it is at the moment. We're having tougher than ever scrutiny on cyber spend, but the demands are still the same. Actually, that's not true. The demands are actually increasing. We're having more than ever scrutiny to give confidence to our C-levels that we are secure, and that sort of that makes the nervousness around, are we making the right decisions are we making the right decisions in our cyber spend? And it has that knock on to the people that are making these decisions, evaluating these products. Are we doing the right things? And I think ultimately, it's underpinned by the cost if we get that wrong as well. That concern if we get that wrong, if we miss something, and what the breach potentially may actually result in costing us. And then obviously trying to attract the right people. It just continues to be that existing trying to attract the right people, and ultimately it links back to the skills issue again. Complexity and sophistication. The complexity of our threat landscape is continuing to grow. The sophistication of the attacks, and I think James has got some very alarming statistics around the increase in sophisticated attacks identified around the globe today. But the attack surface is continuing to expand. It's the same old story in that regard, but unfortunately we're faced by increasing threats to that threat landscape as well, more sophisticated ones as well. I think what doesn't help is the buzzwords within the industry obfuscating from the actual problems as well. I think it's really important that we check ourselves and make sure that we're looking at the right problem, and I'll come on to that in just a second. Response, criminal breakout time is decreasing year on year. In other words, from landing a foothold to moving laterally is decreasing. We're able to move quicker through our environments, which means that we have to have the right technologies to detect things. We have to have the right eyes on glass to detect things. The right skills are still required to look at those alerts, and there's the categories whereby things are definitely defined as true and we need to look at, but there's also the things that need a bit more careful analysis to validate whether these are true or false, essentially. Rapid containment is expected when we identify something that is true. So we need to have the right skills to make that informed decision quickly to contain the issue, because of the previous mentioned point that the breakout time is decreasing as well. I think also what hasn't helped is there is still a existence of old gen providers that have a lump over the wall mentality of they find an alert and are quite quick to pass that to the customer, which again comes back to all of these other comments. You need the skills to be able to deal with those types of things. The new gen and the next gen is about managed detection response, where your providers are responsible and accountable right through all stages of incident response. Now, so the question I would ask is, with all those things going on, and James is going to cover this in just a second, but it's about the question of, are we defining the right problem and not the problem that the market hype tells us we have? Are we focusing in the right area? And this is where CrowdStrike and Integrity have many synergies, and that's why we choose to partner together, because we have exactly the same principles within our business. Okay. The disclaimer alert here is it's about the adversary. The focus and attention of the problem we're trying to solve is around the adversary, focusing in on detecting tactics, techniques, and procedures employed by the bad guys. And that anyone that's sat on webinars with me in the past knows that this is the principle of my existence at Integrity. It's about powering services. It's powering the technologies with services to detect these things. And this is something that's very close to my heart, as it is with James as well. So it's all about the focus around making sure that we're detecting the adversary. How do you measure success or failure in detecting the adversary? Well, you should use frameworks such as MITRE ATT&CK. And again, James will give some interesting statistics on that and observations from the wild. Okay. We both have precedent in detecting sophisticated attacks in environments. CrowdStrike are a global recognized brand and leader in the industry. There's not many high profile attacks that they haven't been associated with detecting. Sony hacks, Russian nation state, Chinese nation state sponsored attacks. There's not much that doesn't get tagged back to CrowdStrike. It's got precedent in that. We have long-standing experience, digital forensics investigation guys that are at the bleeding edge of identifying these new and emerging adversaries in the industry today, and that feeds our own threat intelligence, which leads us to the sophisticated global threat intelligence piece as well. CrowdStrike stands for community and unity in threat intelligence, and we utilize that threat intelligence as part of our service amongst other threat intelligence feeds that help give us that bolster that threat intelligence that feeds our services and empowers the technologies that we recommend to customers today. We are both recognized leaders in this space. We are Integrity or MDR Gartner recognized service provider, partner, and CrowdStrike have been a Gartner leader for as long as they've been CrowdStrike in this space. They know their stuff, and it's highly down to how they define the problem essentially. CrowdStrike's ability to rapidly detect issues as early as possible in the kill chain, and that's crucial. Again, you think about that breakout time, we've got to be able to detect things quickly, which brings us on to the ability to rapidly contain, eradicate, and recover from those particular identifications, identifying those particular issues. And that's where the power of CrowdStrike and Integrity come together. Okay. I won't continue to go down this. I'll come back to this, the back end of James's session here. But without further ado, James, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm going to drop my screen share. I'm going to remember to drop my screen share, and I'm going to hand over to you, and then we'll pick back up. Thanks, James.
Cheers, Dave. Thanks very much. You see my screen? There you go. Thank you very much. It was a really great intro, and thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. So, as Nick said, my name's James. So, very quickly, this is me. So, my background, previously worked sort of across the cybersecurity industry for the past sort of 5 years in the UK, working for another sort of large Fortune 500 companies here on. Mainly on their operational backgrounds, and prior to that, I spent just shy of 7 years in the British Army. I was a former combat officer deployed across sort of UK and NATO operational theatres, including some that involved sort of getting hands-on some sort of cyber warfare experience, which sort of led me down this field. And really, if I go in and start talking about things in terms of threat actors and defining the adversary, which is very much the way CrowdStrike deals with, and understands this problem, and what the whole sort of theme of this webinar is today, understand that my background fits nicely into that, and that's the way I understand or come to take on this problem. And I'm incredibly lucky to work with a company like CrowdStrike who see things in the same perspective via that same lens. So very quickly we're going to go through this. So this is the presentation we've got today, and it's called One Problem, One Purpose, and One Answer. We're all aware of what we define as the problem, which is the threat, right? The threat can be anything from a nation state actor, e-crime actor, ransomware deployments, you name it. We all know what that is, right? And we call it the threat actor. But what of the three things that matter, you, the cybersecurity professional that's on this call today, you and your team and your organization have to make sure that you are secure. I think we spend far too much time thinking about the solution. I fundamentally think that CrowdStrike is the answer, and we've got the technology and the solution around it. But I'm going to spend this webinar today talking about what the problem is, and then we'll see why that then builds into that CrowdStrike solution, and why we're here having this conversation with Integrity360 and as part of their managed response services. Really, I think we end up in a situation where a lot of people don't think about a problem-focused, centric way of viewing issues. So Einstein once said, if he had an hour to save the world, he'd spend 55 minutes defining the problem and 5 minutes solving it. If you crack the definition of the problem you're trying to solve, you will come up with a viable solution. If you don't define the scope of your problem effectively, you're going to come up with a subpar solution, but will not solve the problem you're trying to fix. So just a quick quote there for there, but I think really helps us understand what's going on. I think a lot of the industry, goes about this backwards. So we'll go and people will end up buying tools because they have budgetary budget that's been approved. They've got budget aligned to, I've even seen budgets aligned down to like individual acronyms. They're like, oh, we've got budget for this tool. Why? Like, if you buy a tool or a feature because your peers have it, you've seen a presentation, or you've understood, someone's sold you a new buzzword and said, what are you doing around this space? If you don't understand why you're buying something, you don't understand what's going to happen, that tool is then going to give you a series of alerts. If you're then sat there responding to a series of alerts, you don't understand the origins, you don't know why it's alerting to that problem, you're then going to get yourself into a situation where you achieve strategic surprise. So finally, at some point down the line, having bought solutions, not understanding exactly why you're buying those solutions, you've then been sat there treading water. How's everything going? It's great. We're getting alerts in, and the team are responding to them. It's fantastic. Is it effective? I don't know. I'm responding to the alerts, so it's all good. You get to the point where you will be surprised. And if you speak to a CISO or a sort of senior IT team a week before they have a breach, they will not be aware of the problem. They will think, yeah, it's all fine. Our tools are in place. Our guys are getting the information that they need, and they think it's all fine. Because they haven't defined what the problem is and the solution they're trying to solve, they've then ended up in a situation where they're surprised by the outcomes. And what we're here today is to define what that problem is, and then talk about how we can best, tackle that challenge. So after talking about we need to define the problem, shall we do it? So the problem is this: there's only one problem, and that is the adversary. We must understand what they're trying to do, and this is, we're all aware of what these guys are. We have e-crime actors. If you're across, the CrowdStrike vernacular, we'll talk about spiders. So anything that's something spider is an e-crime actor. You can see in my background today, I've got fancy bear. Anything that's bear is a nation state Russian actor. And we have a number of different organizations that we're trying to look after. And really, if we understand what the problem is, the motivations behind it, the tactics and techniques that these actors are using, then we're able to better understand how to solve this particular issue. And the purpose, I would argue that everyone on this call today, whether or not you're working for a cybersecurity vendor, a service provider, a security partner, or within the IT teams of your organization, you are part of that purpose. All of you have this, which is to make sure that our customers or your organizations are secure from these actors. So we are all here to try and make sure that the problem does not gain access to any systems that they shouldn't gain access to and prevent us from performing normal operations. And then the answer, so once we define those two, the problem and the purpose, then the answer, it really comes down to this: we need a single comprehensive platform. We need an ability to pick up the adversaries as they're coming in order for us to perform our purpose, which is to prevent any unwanted intrusions into our estate and preventing us from doing our job and protecting our people. So that's what we need to do. So the problem, how do we break it down and what does it look like? So the adversarial threat is the only objective truth against which you can measure the effectiveness of your security program, right? So you should not be using any other metric against your estate. You shouldn't be looking at anything else in there. The long and short of it is, can it prevent the threat, the adversarial threat, from getting it? If the answer is yes, then you have an effective program. If the answer is no, your program is ineffective and you need a different solution. So that is the objective truth to it. The way I always used to describe this is waving the combat wand, right? Don't do something that you couldn't do in training and assume that, when it comes to real life, we'll be able to do it. Just wave the combat wand and be like, I'll be fine because X, Y, Z. No, if you can't do it in training, if you can't do it in practice, then in reality, it will be harder because there are additional frictions involved. This is the acid test. This is what we must be measuring ourselves against. So how do we break this down? So throughout this presentation, I'm going to break it down in sort of 3 different verticals. We're going to talk about the adversary problem in terms of volume. So the number of alerts or attacks, the fact that our attack surface is getting larger, and the relative ease of which threat actors now can amplify the amount of attacks that they're doing. So we have a volume problem. The other way the adversary causes issues for us is speed. And we'll look at this in greater detail, but essentially attackers are ever increasingly able to move faster. They are getting quicker and quicker at doing what they can do. This is down to a number of different things, but none of which down to the cost of compute is getting faster. They are getting more and more practiced at what they do. The speed is ever increasing. And the final way the adversary is causing problems for us is sophistication. The complexity of attacks themselves are ever changing. So the way in which adversaries are able to change what they do, adapt what they're doing based on the controls and the way that us as the in the cybersecurity industry are responding to what they're up to. They are they're constantly evolving what they're getting involved in order to better leverage and hide in that complexity and sophistication in order to get successful attacks. So we'll look at all three of these areas and the way that this is changing. We'll talk about the overall trends, and then we'll talk about how we can start dealing with those sort of three problems. So CrowdStrike tracks a metric called distinct and sophisticated intrusions. This is a little bit out of date, this slide, but the trend is continuing and gets the sort of the messaging across. We really sort of track this metric by our threat hunting team, is what we call our Overwatch team. So this is a globally dispersed group of individuals that track nation state and e-crime actors, as well as activist organizations across the globe. And they have this metric which looks at how many different distinct intrusions were they involved in the attacks globally across our customer estate. So we saw sort of over a 2-year time span a roughly sort of 300% increase from sort of Q1 2019 all the way through to Q1 2021. And then this has actually this has continued to accelerate again, and we'll look at this in timings. We've got an exponential growth curve here. What's going on? In that time frame there, we've got circa a 600% plus increase in volume. And the question really is this: have you got 600% more staff to deal with this volume problem? Have you been allocated 600% more budget to deal with this volume problem? So when you're getting that pressure from your C-suite and people are saying, why is our security spend looking this year? Why are we having to bring on more staff? How are we dealing with this? That's one of the really important stats to have and understand, is that this volume problem is not going away. It is continuing to grow and increase, and therefore we need a very robust way of dealing with that. So we talked about volume. We're now going to talk about speed. So again, CrowdStrike tracks a metric which we call breakout time, and we'll dive into this a little bit more detail sort of further on in the presentation. But we can see, back in 2018, we had the average breakout time, so the time from initial ingress into a customer's estate into into lateral movement, so moving across machines that they've gained access to. It was initially sort of 9 hours, almost 10 hours. And then we've seen that decrease over the years to the point where, in 2021 and 2022, we're now looking at just over an hour. And the 2023 stat is just a little over an hour, where we're seeing that the actors now, once they get in, they are very, very quickly moving, because they know that that first machine they get onto it's not their end goal. They are immediately trying to get into other places. So this is the problem the adversary has in terms of speed. And if we understand what their speed looks like, then we can then start solving that problem. And then sophistication. So this is just a quick overview of what we used to see in terms of malware versus malware-free attacks. And what we mean by this is those binaries that come in. You will have seen and you will have heard of the news of ransomware binaries like Locky, Lockbit, Revil ransomware, all of that. All of which are sort of signature-based file attacks. And we look at the stats from 2019. 60% of these were malware. The technology that sort of legacy providers have been using, got increasingly better and better at preventing this. From the fact we can do sort of signature-based scanning in emails to your sort of legacy antivirus solution. We've got better at understanding what is and isn't malware. So the adversary's changed. They've become more sophisticated, and we are now in a situation where malware attacks are in the minority, massively so. We're seeing under 30% of those attacks are now using traditional malware. Traditionally, we're now seeing it deployed very last stage, right when they've achieved everything that they've achieved. They're then dropping on the actual ransomware to try and do some data for encryption, double exploitation sort of techniques. But what we need to be doing now is understanding how are we protecting ourselves from malware-free attacks. And what I mean by that is, your command script interpreter, using PowerShell, traditional administration-based tools, your ability to pick up inherent Windows or Linux commands that are being used by actors once they've gained remote code execution on your machine, editing, binaries on the actual machines themselves, using DLL injection, all of that sort of stuff is all malware-free tradecraft that attackers are now using. And we need to be able to detect, understand, and mitigate against that if we're able to deal with the sophistication. The post-COVID world is a more complex place. So again, still in the sophistication sort of pillar in dealing with the adversary. But what I've got here is a breakdown using the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which is mega, but massive fan of MITRE ATT&CK. I think it's great. But what we've got here is a heat map of the tactics and techniques that we saw pre-COVID. So we can see a little bit of data encrypted for impact up here on the right, in terms of it's starting to get a bit yellow, but the majority of things are green. What that means is that we saw a very even distribution on these techniques used by threat actors to try and get in. We saw, an equally, spread level of techniques used for initial access. So valid accounts was equally used as, trusted relationships and external remote services. So all of which gave, actually the attackers were pretty evenly spread across the board. Post-COVID, this changed, and we now start to see actually the use of valid accounts to get into to provide initial access into into customers' estates is getting more and more common. Why is that coming more and more common? Because it's the easiest way to get in. The fact that we saw that transition between malware-free from malware to malware-free style attacks is the same reason we're seeing initial access by valid accounts, right? The technology that we've got is getting better and better at preventing, phishing and external remote services as an initial form of access. Again, with execution, we're seeing command and scripting interpreter massively in red in here. This is a classic way of doing malware-free based attacks, using tools like command line or bash scripting within machines once things land on. And then, in terms of discovery and how sort of cloud conscious the adversaries are getting, we're starting to see remote system discovery, lateral movement into remote services. Again, adversaries that specialize in compromising cloud infrastructure. We're starting to see the rise of the cloud conscious adversary across the threat landscape. So, really what I want to take away from this, and why I'm showing you this sort of heat map, is to understand that, the adversary is changing, where they're targeting is changing, and we need to be very cognizant of that as a security vendor to help build a robust and reliable security program for yourselves. Right. So from there onto the purpose. So this is us. Right, so the only reason that the cybersecurity community exists is to protect that which we value against that which would hold what we value at risk, right? It's all a risk game. We're in the business of making sure that our customers are secure, and if you've seen the CrowdStrike advertising, and our mission statement is we stop breaches, right? So that's the mission statement for the organization I work with, and it's definitely something that drives the team at i360. They're here to make sure that they are providing to prevent you guys getting breached, and work with you to make sure that what you hold at value, they prevent from risk. So how do we deal with this, those problems that we defined? So we looked at the problem of volume, speed, and sophistication. And what we need to do in terms of understanding how we deal with the volume problem is we need to deal with scale. So we need to be able to scale in a way that we can deal with this volume. We shouldn't get to the point where we are unable, we're completely ineffective at dealing with the volume that the adversaries are throwing at us. We need to be able to scale. We need to be able to visualize all the threats that are coming in. We need to be able to scale to manage that ever-increasing attack surface that Nick spoke about at the start. And we must be able to engage and prioritize response in a way that we can scale to as well. So, it's not an old technique. You look at some of the oldest techniques going to DDoS attacks, that's a scale attack. You're just overloading a server with a huge number of requests, right? The security teams need to be equally robust in terms of their ability to scale, deal with volume as it comes in, because if we get to the point where we're flat out and we'll miss that one detection, it only takes one to get through. So we must be able to scale to deal with that volume problem. In terms of speed, so we need to be able to rapidly respond. We see here, so the 1-10-60 rule, something that CrowdStrike has as a mantra and drives for a large amount of its sort of response thinking. And we saw what the actors were doing in terms of their breakout time, starting at sort of circa 9 hours a few years ago and moving all the way down to just over an hour. And what we call our 1-10-60 rule is that ability to detect in a minute, investigate within 10, and fully respond within 60. And if we're able to rapidly respond, we can counteract that speed that the adversary has. The adversary only has to get in once and respond quickly to one individual line of attack. We in the security industry must be able to rapidly respond to those valid threats, understand, triage and prioritize those, generate intelligence-driven operations and decision-making, and then that is then used to drive our rapid response capabilities. Other thing that we need to do is make sure that we deal with the sophistication problem by simplicity. Now, again, a bit of my background, the counterinsurgency operations that we've sort of seen all over the world are incredibly complex operating environments, things that are going on. And when you're dealing with a complicated situation, you deal with that by achieving operational simplicity. You cannot have individual silos of information, point solutions coming in to deal with certain problems, because everything is interconnected. Your estate and your organizations are interconnected, and their IT infrastructure is getting ever more interconnected. You must achieve simplicity. That enables you to generate a common operational picture. From a common operational picture, you can then understand and create decisions in a unified manner. So, in the same way, and the analogy that always used to be used for me and the operations team is, if you are working with or playing in a football team that is working in a way together, and they could be the fittest football team in the world, they are the best at responding, they're the fittest guys, they're the best kickers in the world. But if you put blinkers on them and they can only see directly in front of them, they've got no understanding of what the rest of their team is doing around them, because they can't get a common operational picture. That team will lose every day. You need to understand what everyone else in your team is doing, achieve simplicity and understand what's going on in a unified manner. Then you can deal with that sophistication. So the answer. So I fundamentally think that the answer is this. We need a single comprehensive platform that can rapidly analyze and respond to adversaries at scale. CrowdStrike has that technological answer to that problem. And this is why we've got to this solution, because we consider ourselves an adversary-focused company. We think of what the actual problem is and what the adversaries are doing. And from that, we're then able to, that drives all of the decisions we make, the technology that we build, and how we sort of operationalize our platform as well. So, of those three areas that we discussed in terms of the adversary, we've got those the first one being volume. So we deal with that volume problem with scale, right? So we have, from our inception back in 2015 when we were founded, we were the first cloud native security company, and we sort of built within the cloud to deal with this particular problem, right? We needed to have a place where we could ingest all of that information. We can sort of track all the adversaries. Actually, we've got over 200 adversaries tracked now, named sort of threat actor groups that we kind of look after. Over 2 trillion events per day, 135 million IOA decisions per minute. So indicators of attack, again, a phrase or a term that CrowdStrike coined. Actually sort of attacks in flight going in. And 1.5 billion containers protected per day across our CrowdStrike cloud. And we achieve that scale using our sort of cloud native security solution. We have our threat graph, our intel graph, and our asset graph, all feeding that information together. And that allows us to achieve what we call community immunity. So the fact that we can, you as a customer of CrowdStrike, you would benefit from all of that information. So an attack that a customer sees on the other side of the globe, one day if it's then aligned using our threat intelligence team as part of our threat graph, you'll be able to, first of all, see that sort of tactic and technique as part of this, as the sort of threat intelligence product, but also, all of that behavior is then used to then train our machine learning and AI models that we use within CrowdStrike to protect you. So that's how we deal with the volume problem and achieve scale. In terms of speed, the concept of breakout time was originally published in 2018 and has been tracked within our sort of global threat report. So what we define that as is, as I said at the start, the time frame between that initial access and then the actors gaining lateral movement. And why we need to sort of stop at this point is because if they are able to achieve lateral movement, again, this is using the MITRE attack framework from reconnaissance all the way through to impact on the right. Once the actor laterally moves, they've normally got the tools in place to then start causing impact on your estate, and they're going to start causing problems. What we're able to do, and this really was what drives our metrics here in terms of our breakout time. So as we saw, when we defined the problem and looked at the problem in terms of speed, again, how we achieve speed and what that means for us at CrowdStrike is this detect, investigate, and respond time frame. Therefore, preventing that lateral movement breakout time in terms of speed, and therefore closing that down in terms of and deal with that problem. The full spectrum response to the adversary speed is exactly that. You need not only the solution down the bottom, the ability to understand what's going on, the various sort of pillars of our technology, but the response capability needs to be there as well. So being able to detect is absolutely critical. But once you've detected, you have to have the people and processes behind that detection in order to make informed decisions. So that's when we talk about the 24/7 MDR coverage or SOC coverage. There is a huge amount of synchronization between us and Integrity360. They've got their own SOC, and they're working with a number of customers at the moment in terms of providing MDR services, and there are MDR services you can purchase directly from CrowdStrike as well. But the cool takeaway here is you must have that ability to respond in an effective manner 24/7, because adversaries know that if they can get in and get moving quickly, they're going to start causing trouble and they're going to achieve success, and we're going to achieve failure. As part of that, we must have a threat hunting capability as well and combine that with intelligence. We don't know what we're looking for. We're not going to be able to understand what response actions we need. So we need to understand what to look for, and that comes with the threat intelligence piece. And then threat hunting, we need to make sure that we not only detect the big flags that come in, that if we do suddenly start seeing ransomware being dropped or anything else, but also those activities that sit in that grey area between administration and malicious activity. That's where our threat hunting team come in. We spoke about them previously. They're called Overwatch, and these are the guys that specialize in hunting down nation state and sort of very ubiquitous e-crime actors as well. So we deal with the problem of speed by providing a full spectrum response, 24/7 coverage across our estate, combine that with threat intel and hunting. So sophistication. How do we deal with all of those different ways that adversaries can get in? How do we deal with all the problems that they can cause? We achieve or deal with sophistication with simplicity. So the CrowdStrike solution is predicated on a single lightweight agent. We can deploy that single agent and collect that data once, push that information through our data fabric into our cloud infrastructure backend. We can view all of this information within a single unified console, generating that common operational picture. So the sophistication of the attacker, what they're getting up to, is nullified by our ability to ingest all the relevant information across our customers' estates. And from that point there, we're then able to respond effectively across everything from security and IT operations in terms of looking at external attack surface management, discovery of rogue devices, from identity protection as well, making response decisions and choices there, into our customers' cloud infrastructure, not only from a posture management side of life, but also cloud workload protection. Our sensors can be deployed into containerized workloads or Kubernetes clusters. We're also what we're known for and what we've been doing for a long amount of time now is providing endpoint security and XDR services. So our ability to put that sensor on our customers' estate across all of their endpoint devices, pull that information in together, and then allow us to take response actions based on the back of that. So when we think volume, think our ability to scale. When we think adversary speed, think of the ability to rapidly respond to deal with that speed. When we think adversary sophistication, all the different techniques they're using, think simplicity. We need that information all in one place for our team to respond. So we started before anyone else in this sort of area in terms of pulling that information together in a cloud native backend, and we continue to develop it faster. And this is sort of what underlies our performance and our sort of industry capability and what we're known for as an organization. So your ability to defeat advanced cyber threats rests almost entirely on your understanding of the problem. And that's it from me on my side. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass back over to Nick. So I'll stop sharing now.
Thanks, James. Cheers. Superb. There's a couple of questions coming in there, James, as well. I'll let you just take a quick look at them while I just sum up, really. I think it's... Can you see my screen, James?
Yes.
Good. I think it's an interesting, an alarming statistic in terms of the 600% increase in distinct and sophisticated attacks, and that's crucially why we exist. Integrity and CrowdStrike to help deal with those things. And again, anyone that's been on webinars with me knows that I bang the same drum, is that these technologies are only good if you've got people looking at them. And shameless self-plug from Integrity's perspective, that's what we're here to do. We provide managed services across 4 SOCs. We have 100 plus security related personnel around these managed detection and response services. We have the ability, we have an open vendor framework. Whilst we work with CrowdStrike, one of our most chosen technologies, we also provide services around SIEM technologies, around NDR technologies, and that's able to give us that best fit for customers working different mix and match of technologies. Of course, we want to work with you to consolidate, but where you have them, we can hook into those to provide a true heuristic view over those technologies across SIEMs and EDR, CrowdStrike type technologies. Lots of personnel. It's obviously really important, and in order to achieve and deal with that type of scale, you need the right you need the right people. But we achieve an operational efficiency ourselves by plugging these types of technologies into SOAR as well, to help rapidly enrich and enhance the alerts that we're receiving with further threat intelligence, giving our analysts meaningful decisions to make, where they've got all of that triaged and enriched information in front of them in order to make informed decisions, essentially. So really important that the technologies are important, and their approach to how they address the problem, which is focusing on the adversary. Crucial that these things are monitored 24/7 by the right skills, okay? But you should also always have an incident response plan in place as well. So just to sort of surmise there, key takeaways: define the problem. Check we're defining the problem, which is the adversary. Check that we are measuring success or failure against a common understood framework, such as MITRE ATT&CK. Advanced technologies such as CrowdStrike, market leading technology like this, are still often require skilled personnel to process and analyze these alerts, essentially. We are at time, apologize for overrunning there. I can see a fair few questions coming in.
Yeah, I think we could probably answer these. I'll do a couple really quickly in like a couple of minutes. That's all right, Nick.
And then we'll take the rest offline. Yeah, that's great, James. Thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, I've got some really good questions coming in. Thanks everyone. So it's great to see some responses. So we've got one sort of talking about credentials being used in attacks, more sophisticated attack methods other than malware. Really good question. What's the best way of protecting against these sort of attacks? So, you know, there are identity-based offerings, you know, that CrowdStrike have, you know, both the ability to protect, you know, Azure AD and on-prem domain controllers in terms of securing your identity plane. If you were lucky enough to see or have watched the videos of the latest Falcon report, the CISO of Mattel gave a really good presentation on how he uses the CrowdStrike identity products to secure his entire OT estate. And that leads me very nicely into another question we had about our OT offering. Yes, we do have an OT offering in a space. Please, you know, if you want to sort of do a little bit of a deeper dive, David, in your question, I will sort of pick that up a little bit later. And again from David as well, talking about the MDR for endpoint, kind of ingest other logs. Yes, we have solutions not only in the log management space. We have a product called LogScale, which is able to ingest essentially whatever we need to do in terms of ingesting logs and managing those on the back end. We can do that either on-prem or as a SaaS service in the cloud. But we also have an XDR product as well, which is using that technology, but then able to push that information on the platform and generate real-time response and questions on that. So, if David, if you're interested, then yeah, we can talk offline about both of those. But thanks everyone for your questions.
James, yeah, I think what we'll do is drop an Ursula. I think that's an excellent question. James and I will address that offline with yourself. I think it's a really good question, and it isn't one I can answer. Been 4 minutes over time. So thanks for that, and appreciate everyone's time today and attendance. I wish you a good day, and yeah, take care. Thanks very much.